We often think of discipline as a form of punishment, a rigid structure that constrains our freedom, a harsh inner voice that demands more, faster, better. But what if we've misunderstood it all along? What if true discipline isn't the opposite of love, but one of its highest expressions? What if it's not about control, but devotion? In a world obsessed with productivity, the word discipline can feel cold, mechanical, even cruel. Yet beneath its surface lies a sacred wisdom, a way of coming home to ourselves through small, consistent acts of care. This meditation is not about fixing yourself. It's about remembering who you already are and realizing that discipline, in its truest form, is how love becomes structure, how tenderness becomes time, how intention becomes rhythm. Let's walk together through the landscape of sacred routine, not as obligation, but as a living prayer. Many of us were taught that discipline is born from force. We were told that to succeed, we must push harder, ignore our needs, and silence our feelings. The result? We learn to confuse cruelty with strength. But here's the paradox. What we call self-discipline is often just self-rejection in disguise. When we use discipline to suppress, we lose connection. We punish ourselves for being human, for needing rest, tenderness, or slowness. And yet, life itself moves in rhythm, not in relentless acceleration. The seasons don't hurry, the tides don't force themselves. Every natural cycle contains discipline, not as punishment, but as pattern. So what if the discipline we truly need isn't the kind that drives us to exhaustion, but the kind that brings us back to harmony? Visualize the sun rising and setting. It doesn't rush to prove its worth. Its power lies in consistency, not aggression. That's sacred discipline, the discipline of nature itself. Why do we resist discipline? Why do routines feel heavy, restrictive, or impossible to maintain? Beneath the resistance often lies emotional hurt. We associate discipline with the voices that once told us we weren't enough, the teacher who shamed us for mistakes, the parent whose love felt conditional, the friend who withdrew when we couldn't keep up. Over time, the word discipline became soaked in pain. It stopped being a guide and became a ghost. But healing begins when we bring compassion into that space, when we realize our resistance isn't laziness, it's protection. The body remembers the sting of hurtful words. The psyche flinches at the echo of betrayal. To rebuild a sacred relationship with discipline, we must start not with control, but with care. Not with do better, but with you are safe now. Imagine offering yourself the same patience you would offer a wounded child learning to walk again. That too is discipline, the gentle rhythm of trust returning. Every loving relationship needs structure. The same is true for our relationship with ourselves. Sacred routine is not about perfection, it's about presence. It's the way we anchor our energy so life's storms don't scatter us. It's the daily rhythm that whispers, "You belong here. You are held." Think of a musician practicing scales. At first, it's repetition, but over time, repetition becomes reverence, a devotion to the art itself. Your routines, too, can become rituals of devotion, not to productivity, but to your aliveness. Drink your morning tea as though it's the first sip of the day the universe ever created. Stretch your body not to burn calories, but to open conversation with your own cells. Write, meditate, walk, not because you should, but because these small acts remind your nervous system, I am anchored, I am loved. When routine becomes sacred, time becomes a temple. We often think discipline means ignoring our emotions, pushing through, staying strong, silencing doubt. But what if true discipline is the courage to listen deeply, to the whisper beneath exhaustion that says, I need rest, to the tension in your shoulders that says, I'm carrying too much, to the ache in your heart that says, I miss myself. Listening is not weakness, it's wisdom. The body is not your enemy, it's your compass. Discipline, then, becomes less about control and more about conversation. It's a practice of tuning in again and again to what's real. When you honor what your body tells you, you create harmony between intention and intuition. This is the paradox of sacred routine. It's both structured and fluid. It allows for rhythm, not rigidity. So let your routine breathe. Let it evolve with your seasons. Let discipline become not a cage, but a current that carries you toward deeper aliveness. Healing doesn't happen in grand moments. It happens quietly, in the small daily choices we make when no one is watching. It happens every time we choose kindness over criticism, nourishment over numbness, breath over burnout. Consistency is the language of safety, and safety is the soil where transformation grows. When we show up for ourselves day after day, even imperfectly, our nervous system learns that love is reliable. Our inner child learns that stability doesn't mean suppression. It means care that can be counted on. The real magic of discipline isn't in the doing, it's in the becoming. It's how we rebuild trust with ourselves. How we say through action, you are worth showing up for. Even when the mind doubts. Even when the heart aches. Even when healing feels far away. Every small act of care, making your bed, lighting a candle, journaling for 5 minutes, becomes an altar stone in the temple of self-trust. Here lies the great paradox. Discipline and surrender are not opposites, they are partners. Discipline gives shape to love, surrender gives it breath. Without discipline, we drift. Without surrender, we harden. It's like a heartbeat, contraction, expansion, effort, ease. Every inhale disciplined, every exhale surrendered. In sacred routine, this rhythm becomes life itself. Some days will feel effortless, others will feel impossible, and both are holy. The wisdom of discipline lies not in perfection, but in presence. To keep returning again and again, no matter how imperfectly. So the next time you fall out of routine, don't call it failure, call it rhythm. Like the tide that recedes only to return stronger, your devotion doesn't vanish, it evolves. True discipline allows space for softness, because what makes a practice sacred is not how strict it is, but how alive it feels. When discipline matures, it transforms into devotion, an effortless flow born of deep alignment. What once felt like effort becomes nourishment. What once felt like duty becomes prayer. And what once felt like self-control becomes self-respect. This is the point of return, the place where the journey of self-discipline leads us back to love. You realize that your routines are not about achieving perfection, but about remembering your inherent wholeness. You realize that the structure you once feared has been quietly holding you all along. And you realize that sacred routine is not about doing more, it's about becoming more present in the doing. When we live this way, discipline is no longer harsh, it's holy. It becomes a love letter written in time, a rhythm that keeps us tethered to what truly matters. Discipline as self-love is a gentle rebellion against the world's definition of success. It's an act of remembering that strength can be soft, that devotion can be slow, that love can wear the face of structure. It's a way of saying to yourself each morning, I will not abandon me. You begin to see your daily rituals not as chores, but as sacred touch points, proof that even in a chaotic world, You can still create rhythm, still create meaning. You begin to live intentionally, not perfectly. Rooted in the paradox that true freedom is found not in escape, but in devotion. And in this devotion, you discover something quiet and profound. You are not becoming someone new. You are simply returning to the self you were always meant to love. Tonight, before you sleep, light a candle. Sit in silence. Ask yourself gently, what rhythm do I need right now? Tomorrow, when you wake, begin with one small sacred act. Drink your water slowly. Breathe deeply before touching your phone. Write one line of gratitude, even if it's simple. I am here. I am learning. I am returning. Let this be your practice, not to perfect yourself, but to honor the miracle of being human. Because discipline is not a cage, it's a compass, a way of remembering that every breath, every act of care, every gentle return is love made visible.